So I didn't plan to do a little bit of extra Dark Tower material on the channel, but as we all know, if Kyle wills it, there's little you can do to fight it. So let's talk some Stephen King's Dark Tower. Long days and pleasant nights, my cob babbies. We are back again to talk Stephen King's magnum opus. This is The Dark Tower. Now, what this video is, guys, is kind of looking at some of the frequently asked questions I get from beginners or people who want to begin The Dark Tower. And I figure there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of stuff that people think about this series that haven't really been cleared up for them. So this is going to be spoiler-free unless something as simple as like what some of the lingo means. You want to keep that completely fresh. Well, I mean, that's up to you. I'm never going to spoil anything about this story because there's so much that can just wow you if you go into it fresh. So with this, guys, again, these are things that I think I want you to kind of make up your own mind, but this is a series I think that everyone should try. So lots of first-timers are reading this on my Discord right now, and I thought this is a great time to kind of dive into some of these commonly asked questions I get from, like I said, people who are just thinking about beginning. So I think the top question that I really ever get about this is, do I need to have read Stephen King before, or can I begin with The Dark Tower? And with that, I think it's just it's a personal choice, really. It's really just kind of depend on you. I recommend no, because I think there's so many things that you will grab if you've read other things first. Also, I don't know if starting with a 7 or 8, if you count the add-on novel, an 8-book series is the best way for you to experience Stephen King. I think it's a high commitment for you for an author you don't even know if you like or not. So I would suggest maybe starting something a little smaller. I've done a video previously a while back about where I think you should start with Stephen King, so I think that's a good place to begin and see if you like the man's writing style. I think that would really help before you decide you're going to commit to a long, long journey, because the long journey is ahead when you are on the path of the beam headed towards the Dark Tower. But I also think that a lot of the connections in the Dark Tower, I don't think there are anything that you have to know going in. So I think it's almost like, it's not like the MCU guys, you're not missing a movie and you're missing the plot. It really is like a thing of almost like Easter eggs. There's never going to be anything that you feel like is spoiled for you because of Dark Tower or vice versa. But I think it's just one of those things that when you go into, you're like, oh, that connects to this, and this character shows up here, and things like that. There are a couple of side things, which I'll talk about with what some of the things that you want to read first. But again, I think you can start here. I don't know if that I would really recommend it, but I don't think it's going to be unclear to you about what's going on if you've never read any other Stephen King books before. But I also think it's kind of like the reverse order. If I say, hey, there's things that when you're reading Dark Tower, you're like, hey, this connects to this, this, and this. You read Dark Tower first, and then you go back and read those other books. You're like, oh, yeah, this happened in Dark Tower. So I guess it kind of works either way. So that one, like I said, kind of up to you on how you feel about it. The next biggest question I get is, what books should I read before I begin the Dark Tower? And again, guys, you don't have to read anything. However, there are some things I would suggest. If you are willing to do the extra work, if you're willing to do your homework before you begin this journey, you're all in and you want to be fully informed before you go on the path of the beam. Okay, here's some things that I would recommend here. Again, you don't need to do this. It's just a suggestion if you're willing to put in the work here. The Stand. Now, I know The Stand is an incredibly long book. It's a wonderful book, but it is an incredibly long book. But it's one of those where I'm like, I think you're going to get a lot of context to a specific villain that does show up in the Dark Tower. You're going to get a lot of details about some of the events that happen in The Stand, which are referenced in the Dark Tower. So there's lots of things like that. And yeah, the villain in that story, there is very many encounters with him or her in this journey of the Dark Tower. So I think, again, that seems like a long book to do if you don't want to put in that much time. But I think, again, well, first, I think you should read The Stand because it's amazing. Yeah, I really do. But after that, I think, yeah, you want to know a little bit more about why it's a big deal when this character shows up. You'll kind of understand why. But again, I think that also kind of works in reverse order. Say you're doing this like Tarantino style and you want to go back and be like, oh, okay, well, this is what this character did before. I think that would work out just fine. Next up would be Salem's Lot. Now, the deal with Salem's Lot here is that there is a character that shows up in the Dark Tower from Salem's Lot in book number 5. And book number 5 will spoil the hell out of the entire plot of Salem's Lot. So you don't need to read Salem's Lot before this. However, Salem's Lot, again, one of Stephen King's best stories, and you're not going to want to be spoiled on it. So I would definitely say, if you've got the chance, make sure you read at least Salem's Lot beforehand, because you get context for that character and you won't have that storyline ruined for you, because it is just a thrill ride of a book. So if you're telling me one book I need to read before Dark Tower, it is Salem's Lot, because of those reasons. Next up, guys, I gotta say Insomnia. Now, I just reread Insomnia recently, and I remember reading it as a teenager, and I read that before I read The Dark Tower. And I remember thinking, a lot of this I don't really understand. Now reading it after reading Dark Tower, I'm like, oh my God, there are so many things that this explains about the Dark Tower. It's amazing how much they mentioned the Crimson. They talk about the Crimson King, which is a big player in the Dark Tower. It's actually the first appearance of the Crimson King in the multiverse. You get the meanings of what's going on with the levels of the tower, which is something you probably don't understand what I even mean right now. Purpose and random. All these things are kind of brought up in Insomnia and explained. I haven't read Black House, but a lot of people say Black House is kind of the same, whereas those two books help build the lore of the Dark Tower. So I almost think that those would kind of be maybe better after you read Dark Tower, but with Insomnia, I think it explains a major character that is just very important in books 6 and 7 of the series. So I think if you've got a chance, you've got the time, I know Insomnia is a big boy, I think you should, if you can, read it before like book 6 or at least book 7, because there are some major events with a character that shows up in that book that you'll kind of just reading Dark Tower be like, I don't really understand why this character's here, where they came from. This really gives it a lot of context. So again, it helps to flesh out that world, I think, quite a bit. Now the rest of them, guys, these are just kind of iffy. I don't really necessarily think that these are going to benefit you any reading them before you read Dark Tower. I think a lot of these, if you read them after, I think it'll be cool, just kind of like almost like reminiscing about the tower. Again, these are going to kind of be up to you. Like I said, I think it would be fine if you read these afterwards. First is Eyes of the Dragon, obviously, because you get to know, again, more about that specific character that is also in The Stand, showing up in the Dark Tower, and you get to know a lot about that character's abilities, and again about this thing about how they jump between different worlds. There are different levels of the tower. There are other worlds than these, as they say, and it is where you get that first explanation about how this character does that, and you get to learn about the dim and other things like that. Hearts in Atlantis is one, because I think it really explains what breakers are, which is very big in book 6 and 7 of the Dark Tower. So again, that's another one. Hey, you want the explanation for that. For me, it didn't really bother me that much. It's not like the character in Insomnia that I think is just vital to it, but you do get an explanation of a little more of who this character is. And then Little Sisters of Illyria, that's a short story in Everything's Eventual. That is a prequel that takes place before the Gunslinger. Again, doesn't add anything to the story. It's just kind of like some adventuring that Roland goes on before our quest proper. So again, those are going to kind of be up to you guys. So again, you're a gun to my head. You're asking me which ones do I absolutely have to read if I don't mind reading stuff before I start the Dark Tower. Definitely say Salem's Lot, The Stand if you've got the time, and Insomnia before you read book 7 for sure, I think. So again, guys, I want to make it clear, you do not need to read anything beforehand. So, the most obnoxious question that I get is, I have heard the Gunslinger doesn't make sense. Can I skip it? To me, I feel like this is book 1 of 7, guys. You're not going to get a lot of answers up front. And I think that's a problem that a lot of new readers have to it, is they need all the answers. And that book gives you almost none. It sets the story up. It's very much a prologue to the story, but I feel like if you skip it, this is like starting Star Wars A New Hope, where they're leaving Docking Bay 94. I really feel like that's where you would be starting that movie. So you have no idea who any of these characters are. You have no idea why these characters are important. Nothing like that. There's an introduction to a main character in here that I think you would be completely clueless why this character ends up being important again in book number 3. So no, I do not think you should skip it. I think you should just go into it with the expectations of, I'm not going to have a lot explained to me. It's going to set up this world, and I'm going to have a ton of questions. And trust me, guys, you get all those answers along the way, but you got to understand this is going to be a journey, and you're not going to get a lot of answers up front. And I think that's what makes it great. But I want you to realize with confidence that he did know where he was going with it, and you're going to get those questions answered. You just aren't going to get any in book number 1. So accept that it's a long ride, first and foremost, and I think that will help you a little bit along the path of the beam. That brings me into this, guys, and that is, of course, what is Ka? You know, Ka is something that I referenced here, path of the beam, high speech in general. With this, high speech in the Dark Tower is really just lingo that they use. Lots of in-world phrases and things like that. Their language is just a little different than ours, or something that's almost like classical, almost in like a Arthurian legend kind of way. It's just some terms that people use, and then us book readers that get really, really attached to this series start throwing these things into our daily vocabulary because it's fun. I mean, my wife has never read this series, and even she knows what some of these phrases mean because I have been slipping them into my daily vocab ever since we've been together, to where she's almost like grabbing by the ears and being like, I don't know what Dark Tower is, but I'm like, but you know it's from Dark Tower, you know? So as far as Ka, guys, simply put, Ka is what you or I would consider uncontrollable destiny. Now, it guides us, it leads us, it serves neither good nor evil. It just kind of is. It controls both sides. And it isn't considered a plan necessarily, at least not one that us mortals can understand. So, it's just one of those things, guys, that you will just kind of roll with and understand that this is the way things are going to be. Ka is a wheel, and it's going to repeat itself, but you can't necessarily stop it. But it's not something, like I said, that's a plan, at least not that our characters can understand. It's definitely from a higher figure, let's put it that way. So also Ka-tet, when you talk about Ka-tet, it's just it's Ka guiding a group of individuals together. A group of individuals whose destiny is really to work together. And this is something that King has explored numerous times within the multiverse. Think about the Losers Club, for example. When you got the Losers Club, these are characters whose destiny it is to be together and face this insurmountable odds. So he never really uses that term in some of those other stories like it, but it's something that he does a lot in his stories, and it's something you will notice a lot going back to some of his other tales about Ka-tet. So I hope that that brings up a lot of clears up a lot of the terminology I'm using. The path of the beam is something I feel like you should explore on your own while you're reading it, because it'll make more and more sense as the series goes along. I feel like Ka is the only one I can really talk about without feeling like I'm spoiling anything for you. But just know that the terminology will make sense over time. If you're really struggling with the terminology, though, I will recommend you pick this up, The Complete Concordance by Robin Firth. Robin Firth is basically, if there is such a thing as like a Tolkien scholar, but for the Dark Tower, this is the guy. However, I want you to be careful with this book. It's really great for locations, for terminology, for items, things like that, but be careful looking up characters, because it talks about each one, it talks about what the character does through the entire series, and it will spoil the hell out of you. So be careful. It's very much like the that Wheel of Time companion book that you can get spoiled if you don't do it. But it is still very good for first-time readers if you want to look up locations and terms and things like that. So proceed at your own risk, but it is a great resource, especially on a reread. I am on my current reread right now, guys. I just finished Wizard and Glass, my second read of that. I'll be doing that review in May. I'm excited to talk about it. Okay, but let's talk about this first. The final question here. I've heard that the ending sucks. So should I even bother? I don't think that the ending sucks. I definitely don't think the ending sucks. Now, here's the deal with it. It was very divisive 15 years ago when the last book came out. There was lots and lots of discussion and debate, some disappointment from some, lots of confusion, lots of people were angry about it. Over time, I feel like a lot of people have actually come around to thinking it's brilliant. It's a brilliant ending. I get the reputation as someone who hates the ending. That's not true. That's not true. There's some things that happen along the way, some decisions that King makes in book 6 that really almost broke the series for me and had me going into book 7 with my arms crossed because it wasn't what I wanted, kind of thing. So that's something I'm curious how I'm going to feel about it on a reread here now. So, because I haven't read these since they were brand new. This latter half of the series, I think Wizard and Glass was the first one I read when it was brand new. And then I waited. And that's the thing. is you have to wait. I had to wait about 6 years between book 4 and 5, So I had this thing where I just kind of had wrote my own ending in my head because I never thought he was going to finish, especially after his accident. I didn't think he was ever going to finish it. So I think that might have played into it a little bit, especially when I see how much people, fellow King fans, have kind of come around on it. So again, I think the ending is fine. I'm quite fine with the ending. I think it actually serves... it really brings around the cause of will thing. It's a really big deal. It really is a beautiful ending. I just don't like decisions that he made, which you will find out on your own. But again, that's going to vary. A lot of people I talked to, the things that bothered me did not bother them at all. And again, a lot of people who are binge reading these and they're not having to wait years between books don't have any of the problems that I have with some things. So I will admit that some of those things were due to expectations. Expectations are hard to capture when you've got that many years of waiting between books. So I still have my gripes about book 6 and some things that I didn't care that he did in the last book, but I definitely think that the ending and the journey is very satisfying, and it's definitely worth your time. I recommend this to everybody. I think that people were stunned when I did my top 10 fantasy series of all time and I had it number 5. And in those comments, everybody's like, but you hated the ending. I did not hate the ending. I don't really know how that came about. I was very upset about some things. Like I said, in book 6, it had me going into book 6 or book 7, kind of dreading it. And it was seriously, I was so upset about it. I didn't read King for damn near a decade after that. It took 11/22/63 to bring me back, but that's a story I've already told numerous times. You can go back to my How I Became a Constant Reader video where I talked about that. But no, Dark Tower is absolutely worth your time. It is one of the most incredible journeys that you can take. And I'm glad that there's a lot more interest for it now than it seems like there was, just even a year ago or 2 years ago when I did my Why You Should Read the Dark Tower. I feel like there's a lot more people really interested in it. So again, this is something I think about all the time, a story that's never quite gotten out of my head. Again, I use the high speech in my daily vocabulary because it's a series that will always be special to me. I can't see any Western or anything like that without thinking about this movie. Like I can't watch any Sergio Leone movies without saying, hey man, there's Roland, the gunslinger, baby, So it's a series I think has just been very much an instrumental part of my life. And some of the things I feel like I actually have taken from it and kind of adjust. I mean, all the time I will say things. I'll be thinking to myself, well, Ka was what it is, And when you read the series, you'll understand how those things, you may think it sounds hokey, you may think it sounds ridiculous or hyperbole. But when you read the series, guys, you'll see that these things are very much important. And I think that you're going to like what you read. But I will recommend, guys, you do commit to reading at least the first 2 books, because if you just read The Gunslinger and you want a lot of answers, you're going to be upset with that. I say read at least Gunslinger and Drawing of the Three, and you're going to be able to tell, guys, if this is a series for you or not. But the one thing I'll say about this series is there is not another series even remotely close to it. You can never be reading this series and say, you know what, this reminds me of this, or this from that story. Absolutely not. This is completely unique, absolutely amazing ideas that he puts into this story, and I hope you guys will check it out. So guys, if you have any other questions, please drop in the comments and let me know what they are. Jump on the Discord. We're doing a read along with it right now. They're starting Wizard in Glass. I started early because again, I have no... Ka is what it's going to be. But I want you guys to jump on the Discord, ask questions. You want to kind of catch up and do with the read-along that they're doing right now. That is awesome. They're doing 1 book per month. We're going to be ending in August when we do Went Through the Keyhole, which is the add-on book to the series. So guys, I hope that answered all your questions, and I hope you will give The Path to the Dark Tower a try. So drop in the comments and let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you there.